Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. A man observed a woman in the grocery store with a 3-year-old girl in her basket. As they passed the cookie section, the little girl asked for cookies, and her mother told her no. The little girl immediately began to whine and fuss, and the mother said quietly, "Now, Monica, we just have half of the aisles left to go through. Don't be upset. It won't be long." Soon they came to the candy aisle, and the little girl began to shout for candy, and when told she couldn't have any, began to cry. The mother said, "There, there, Monica, don't cry. Only 2 more aisles to go, and then we'll be checking out." When they got to the checkout stand, the little girl immediately began to clamor for gum and burst into a terrible tantrum upon discovering there'd be no gum purchased. The mother patiently said, "Monica, we'll be through this checkout stand in 5 minutes, and then you can go home and have a nice nap." The man followed them out to the parking lot and stopped the woman to compliment her. "I couldn't help but notice how patient you were with little Monica," he began. Whereupon the mother said, "Sir, my little girl is Tammy. I'm Monica." It's hard to be patient, isn't it? Monica was trying to be patient with her daughter, and it's even harder for us to be patient when we're waiting, when our time is empty and all we have to focus on is the waiting. Once again, the psalmist knew what that was like. Even more, he knew how hard it is to wait, particularly when others seem to be doing well. Psalm 37, verse 7 says, "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret over those who prosper in their way, over those who carry out evil devices." Now, I don't know if this psalm was written by David or not, but it sure could have been. This Advent, we are exploring Bible verses and Bible people who needed to wait for something. And with all that David did, with all the many, many stories that we have of what happened to and with David, we might never have put David and waiting together. But in truth, David had several significant times of waiting in his life. The first came when he was a young boy. Saul was the king at that time, the first king of Israel, and God told the prophet Samuel that he was supposed to go anoint a new king to take Saul's place. God directed Samuel to go to Bethlehem and anoint one of Jesse's sons as the king. Now, Jesse paraded 7 of his sons before Samuel, but God told Samuel it wasn't any of those. Samuel asked Jesse if Jesse had any other sons, and sure enough, there was the 8th son, the youngest, watching the sheep in the fields. Just as an aside, remember that in the Bible, 7 was the number of completeness and fullness. The 8th of something meant a new beginning. So the fact that David was the 8th son meant that God was doing a new thing with him. So they brought David in from the fields, and Samuel anointed him to be king over Israel. Only, get this, it was a secret. No one knew this had happened yet, and David was just a boy and then had to wait for years and years before he actually became king. And what's more, there was a time period, several years in fact, when King Saul pursued David and his followers to kill them. David refused to strike a blow against Saul, even though he had several chances. David knew he had been anointed to be king, but he knew too that Saul had also been anointed. Just because he had been anointed didn't mean Saul had been unanointed. God would make David king in God's time. How hard it must have been for David to wait all those years for what had been promised to him. Even more, King Saul still held all the trappings of office and the power of king and was using them to make David live as a fugitive. It would be natural for David to fret over those who prosper in their way, as the psalm said, while he struggled to get by. But David trusted that God would make him king in God's time. So David waited patiently. Waiting is not our strong suit. Waiting patiently is even harder. Be still before the Lord. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.